Top of the morning, everybody. It is good to have you here. Happy Tuesday. Unless it's not a happy Tuesday, then happy miserable Tuesday. Thanks for watching The Sweat, presented by DraftKings. I am Emerson Lotzia. So coming up in this show, we're going to help you build those lineups around the NBA. We got some sportsbook chatter in there as well. We got three guys to help us here for the NHL. And then what else do we have? Yes, golf. Golf returns to paradise. We got our gorgeous golf gurus in the house. It's going down in Reed Fowler's neck of the woods. So the Happy Harry Hawaiian will give us all that information, along with Jeff Ulrich, who is a lot less happy and a lot less hairy. We will start, though, in the NFL, because typically in the past we're talking playoffs this time of year, right? This is the week, but no, we got an 18th week this season. Let's go. Let's price check some of the salaries. They have hit DraftKings, and we've got an NFL panel here for it. DraftKings contributors Steve Buchanan, Pierce Dietrich, Maddie Meiselman. Our first look, again, at the salaries for Sunday's main slate. Steve, quarterback, which guy stands out to you?
Yeah, I wasn't really considering Joe Burrow at first because, the Cincinnati Bengals, they already clinched their playoff spot and all, but going through the scenarios, they actually have a legit chance to take the number one seed. A few things need to happen here for that to happen, but they're not out of it. And I think the Bengals would love to grab that number one seed and kind of shock everybody here. And I don't know if anybody watched that game last night with the Browns. Holy crap, did they look absolutely horrific. They lost like three of their defensive backs during that game due to injuries. Baker Mayfield's already like, just get me into surgery. I don't even want to play week 18. Get me out of here. That team looks like an absolute disaster. So with one team who has already basically given up, and then you got a team who has a shot to win the number one seed in the AFC with the Bengals, I'm liking what I'm seeing here from Joe Burrow at 7,200. He's one of the more expensive guys on this slate, but he's been absolutely locked in against the Chiefs, against the Ravens. Another good matchup here against the Browns. If he's healthy and those defensive backs are still out for the Browns, absolutely love Joe Burrow this week.
Yeah, Chase wants to lock up that Rookie of the Year. Joey B wants to lock up Comeback Player of the Year. Pierce, what about you, man? Which quarterback stands out to you here when you're looking at the salaries?
Final week of the season, that means it's going to be a Jordan Love week. We've seen this. I love this spot. We've seen historically these good teams that rest their quarterback and they let the next young stud or star step in and play with all the weapons, and they see what he's got and they put up a strong performance. Saw Patrick Mahomes do this a couple years ago. The most famous or infamous episode of this was 2011 with Matt Flynn stepping in for Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay against Detroit and throwing for almost 500 yards and 6 touchdowns. Now, Matt Flynn never did anything. He got a big contract, but in that week, he absolutely destroyed fantasy football. I would imagine that Jordan Love is going to be allowed to do whatever he wants. They're going to take the cuffs off of him and see what he's got and see if he's someone they can trust for next season. He's really cheap, and he's got tremendous upside, as we've seen from these one-time late-season quarterbacks in the past.
All right, yeah, he's $5,500 there at Detroit. Matty, quarterback you think you must roster this week? You like his price?
So I think Pierce is right, kind of, because I think Aaron Rodgers will play like a quarter or so, and then we'll see all of that from Jordan Love after that. That may actually be enough, 3/4 of him at 5,500. He's pretty far down there. I think this week everyone is playing Jonathan Taylor. One, because the Colts need to win, and then he's got incentives in his contract. There's rushing record. There's all of that stuff. He's trying to win Offensive Player of the Year, potentially MVP. And it's going to be really easy to fit him at 9,300. So Carson Wentz is the guy I'm looking at here. He's pretty underpriced for what's a really, really good matchup against the Jaguars. 5,800 for him, 5,900 for Pittman. I think this is a pretty good stack. And then I think you're also getting a ton of leverage on Jonathan Taylor. Maybe Jacksonville scores a touchdown or two early and the Colts actually need to throw the ball. That's the scenario I'm looking for. So for like the GPP leverage play, this is the one, at least at this point of the week, that stands out. I'm sure a lot could change, but for now, I'm going with Wentz.
Dude, I'm not kidding you. When I typically call the Jaguars America's team, everyone thinks I'm kidding. No, this week, everyone is a Jaguars fan, because if the Jaguars somehow beat the Colts in Week 18, the Chargers and Raiders, who play on Sunday Night Football, they only have to finish in a tie. So neither team will really be that motivated to win. And then both of them will make the playoffs. We could just see them kneel down like 30 times a game, Steve.
I would be classic, and it'd probably be more entertaining than the game we saw last night, so I'd be all for it.
Dude, me too. Steve, who do you like at running back, though?
Yeah, look, I'm imagining that the Packers are going to rest some of their starters in this one. So if that's the case, A.J. Dillon going up against the Detroit Lions at 6,200 feels like a really enticing option. We have to wait and see what the news and what the plan is for the Packers in this one, but they really have nothing left to play for at this point. But even in the timeshare with Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, at least in my opinion, looks like the better back at this point. I love everything that I see from A.J. Dillon. Had a really strong game last week against the Vikings, another really bad run defense. There, 14 carries, 63 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 catches on 3 targets. He was fantastic there. Now he's got just as good of a matchup this week against the Lions. Again, don't lock him in just yet. See what the Packers want to do. But even if he's in that timeshare, if he's going to take maybe a 60-40 split in this game, I love A.J. Dillon at 6,200 against the Lions. If he was a starter, he'd be much more expensive in this game.
Hey, Matty, a running back that has a price tag you just can't fade.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see on the Packers because I think the starters will play a little, but if they don't, then yeah, all of these guys become much more appealing. And 3/4 of A.J. Dillon too, just like with Jordan Love. Like that's still very, very appealing. Again, I think Jonathan Taylor is the guy everyone will play because we're going to have all this value open up. I think there's a chance Nick Chubb doesn't play. I mean, the Browns seemed intent on not carrying in Week 18 with Baker Mayfield maybe sitting. So Dearness Johnson is $4,800. Like, that would probably become, at least to this point, the slate's best value play if we get that scenario. I'll give one more quick pick in case we don't get that. Alvin Kamara as like the pivot off of Taylor. The Saints need this game. I mean, they probably aren't getting in the playoffs even if they win, but they're not going to know that at the time they play their game. So they're going to be out there trying to win. Kamara's $8,300. They're playing the Falcons. I mean, it's not like it's a hard matchup or anything. And I would imagine that he's substantially less popular than Taylor is. So Kamara, I think, is, as of now, like my favorite guy to pay up for here.
Yeah, Saints get into the playoffs with the win over the Falcons and a 49ers loss to the Rams. We talked a little bit about it yesterday, Pierce. 2 very possible outcomes there. Who do you like at running back?
Steve and Matt bring up an important point that we don't know who's going to be fully committed to each game, who's going to play each game. And so we have a natural tendency to pay up to get these big-time performers, but we're not sure that paying up is going to result in 4 quarters of full-time action. So you may want to lean down the salary schedule and take some of these cheap guys like Le'Veon Bell is going to be really the only guy in Tampa. We predicted Keyshawn Vaughn was going to have a big game against Carolina a couple weeks ago, and he finally had it. Well, now he's got bruised ribs. Jones is unlikely to go. Fournette is not going to be available. That means Le'Veon Bell, even though he might be out there in a walk or barely getting 2.5 yards per carry, he's going to be the only guy they have. And he's provided a 7 reception point floor, which is solid and safe, which could be more with the receiving situation being what it is in Tampa. And we also know that when it comes to goal line carries, it's going to be Lev Bell. It sounds ugly and gross at that price point, but I think you got to get used to some of these plays that you normally wouldn't do because it is Week 18.
All right, well, in the wide receiver department, it's not a shocker here as I'm taking a gander at salaries. You got Cooper Kupp as the highest priced guy. Matt, is he he's a must roster at this point, is he not? And the Rams need this game. They could
get
that first place.
The Rams do need this game. So, again, the issue is going to be how many other people have him. I like him a lot. So just to go back to what Steve was talking about with Joe Burrow, I think that might be the pivot to play some of those expensive receivers. I do have a concern that maybe the Bengals look at the scoreboard at halftime and the Titans are up 3 touchdowns on the Texans and they say, we can't get the 1 seed now. So we'll take our foot off the gas. But maybe that doesn't happen and the Titans don't play well and the Bengals actually have a shot at it and they just, go for it through the whole game. So I think if you're playing cash games, you just play Kupp. It'll be easy to fit him. GBPs, though, I think T. Higgins in particular, 7,200. Like Chase is coming off the big game. I would imagine T. Higgins isn't as popular. Chase also has the narrative going for Rookie of the Year. So Higgins, I think, probably is the lower owned of the two. Last week, Chase, no one played Chase. And I think Higgins could be in the same spot this week.
All right, Pierce, how about you, man?
Deante Johnson at 7,600, 15 targets in Monday Night Football. If you're going to get 15 targets from Johnson against the Baltimore Ravens, you kind of got to take that. Now, he did turn those 15 targets into 31 yards, which might be some sort of record. I think that perfectly summarizes what that Monday Night Football game was. But it could be different against the Ravens, 19th when it comes to missed tackles, and they are second worst when it comes to yards after the catch. So 15 targets from a team that doesn't tackle well, allows a lot of yards after the catch. There's a really good chance that you're going to turn one of those 15 targets into big plays. You look at every Ravens metric, and they are bad against the pass. So So I think if you're going to get 15 targets against this poor team, you just kind of got to lock this one in.
All right, Steve, which wide receiver has the best price this week in your opinion?
Yeah, Stephon Diggs at 7,800 going against the Jets. This was a secondary he absolutely decimated back in week 10. 8 catches, 162 yards, and a touchdown in that game for 33.2 DraftKings fantasy points. I mean, look, the Buccaneers were behind the majority of that game. Brady threw for over 400 yards in that game. Don't let that score fool you. This is a secondary you can still beat downfield. The Bills absolutely need this game too. They need to win this one if they want to clinch the AFC East. This is going to be a big game for them. So Josh Allen is going to be focused on his number one guy. That's Steph Diggs. Love him at 7,800 this week.
Pierce, tight end. This is where you shine. Is there someone cheap you actually really like this week?
I don't think you're going to need to go down cheap at tight end this week with all the other value plays, being that it is the final week. But there will be plays that will pop up. We're going to see that people are injured or that we're going to see weird lineups. So keep your eye on that. John Bates looks like one of the guys cheap-wise that might pop up, but you can definitely pay up. I'm not going to go all the way up. I'll go with Pat Freiermuth. I'll just keep attacking this Ravens secondary. It never lets you down. Even when the Ravens secondary was healthy at the beginning of the season, their scheme did not work well against tight ends. They allowed plenty of fantasy points. We know Ben Roethlisberger can't quite get the ball downfield anymore. He can barely get the intermediate routes working. So Freiermuth's going to get 6 to 8 targets. And we also know 18 red zone targets on the season, 7 touchdowns. If tight end comes down to chasing touchdowns, you can go with a long shot and save some money. You can pay up, or you can pay right in the middle and get a really good shot of a touchdown with Pat Freiermuth.
All right, Steve, what's your strategy here at tight end, bro?
You know, when DeAndre Hopkins was out for the Cardinals, it's like, oh, who's going to be the new top receiver? It's really been Zach Ertz. 33 targets in the 3 games now that he's played without DeAndre Hopkins. Zach Ertz has been the guy that, you know, Kyler Murray's been kind of leaning on here. 9, 13, and 11 for his targets over his last 3 games. Now he's facing one of the worst defenses in the league in the Seattle Seahawks against the opposing tight ends. I mean, in typical Zach Ertz fashion, he gets all these targets, doesn't do a ton of production with him, but with that type of volume at 5,300, if I told you there was a wide receiver that was getting about, 10 targets a game in the 5K range, you'd be jumping all over that. So Zach Ertz going up against the Seahawks, can't defend that position to begin with. I'll take that all day, baby.
Okay, who are you going to take all day? Maddie, Sunday, week 18.
So just a point we've been talking about a little bit, watching for rest. I think one of the ways to try to get a good handle on motivation and things like that is to look at the betting lines, because that'll kind of give an indication of like, why is this line moving this way? Maybe someone knows something about guys sitting for the second half. And one of the spots I'm looking at here is like, maybe the Rams just decide they don't really care a ton about the division, and maybe they just don't play their defensive starters the whole game, their offensive starters, whatever. It could be an easier matchup for George Kittle in a game the 49ers do need to win to get into the playoffs. So I think that spot could set up well. I mean, even if the Rams do play their guys the whole game, Kittle's 6,700. He can certainly do well at that price tag. But if you have to go cheap, Cole Kmet, I think, is in a good spot. He was last week, too, against the Giants. The Bears were just up by so much they didn't really need to throw. I think against the Vikings, that won't be the case. It should be a close game. Kmet could do well. So those are really my 2 guys this week.
And then, Steve, what about like a value play? I know we've mentioned a couple times, like each team's situation is totally different. We don't know how long many starters will play for certain squads. So is there someone you have your eye on early right now, the cheap price tag, who could give us a lot of points?
Yeah, talked about him last week, scored 2 touchdowns. Antoine Wesley over with the Cardinals, going back to the Cardinals here. He's also been someone that's seen a bump in play since DeAndre Hopkins went down. Has seen 15 targets over his last 3 games since Hopkins was out. He scored 3 touchdowns in that span. If they're going to keep giving him the ball, he goes downfield too. He's seen 6 targets already of 20 yards or more. So if he's going to go to him and going to him deep, 4,100 is not much to pay for to get him in your lineup.
Pierce, value play.
Tyrell Grayson, he kept his jersey on last week and 8 targets for 6 catches, 81 yards, and a touchdown. The Buccaneers are going to be without Antonio Brown. They're without Chris Godwin, and also Mike Evans. We don't know his status. I mean, he's going to be out there, but how much are they going to use him? And as much as this team should play conservatively, we know that Brady will pass 30 to 40 times. They've got to go somewhere. It looks like it's going to go to Cyril here in this spot. So he's just too cheap to pass up with the volume that he's going to get.
All right, Matt, is there someone too cheap to pass up in your eyes?
I don't think so, because by the time Sunday rolls around, there's going to be like 65 of these value plays just based on all the news that's likely to come through before then. So the guy that seems the most underpriced to me, and I guess is part of a good stack that I think has a lot of upside, it's that Bengals-Browns game, and Case Keenum, if he starts, is $4,800. So that allows you to do a lot if you play some cheaper Browns. Maybe Jarvis Landry doesn't play this week either, and you could play him with an even cheaper receiver against a Bengals team that you probably are going to need to score against. I mean, the Browns don't care about this game necessarily. It would just be nice to end the season on a good note. So if the Bengals are still throwing the ball a ton, trying to get the 1 seed, trying to get Chase Rookie of the Year, all of that, the Browns are going to have to throw too. And I think this could be a really, really cheap overall passing game. But Keenum, 4,800. I mean, that's probably the cheapest viable quarterback we're going to get this week.
All right, quick and dirty, you three. Do not forget, hop on Amazon now. Order those Jacksonville Jaguars jerseys, and they should arrive by Sunday. Thank you for the help, though, today with NFL Price Check. We will do the DFS NBA thing with some sportsbook sprinkled in right after this quick break. All right, 5 games around the NBA tonight. We got a couple guys here to help you build the optimal lineup. Plus, we're going to talk some of the best bets available on the DK Sportsbook. Let's go. We got Gary and Thorne here, DraftKings contributor, alongside Mr. Nick Whalen of RotoWire. Time for Chase or Fade, guys. So LeBron James has really put the Lakers on his back over the last 8 games since AD went down. LA is hosting the Kings. I need you to chase or fade for me here, Gary, and that this is going to be a LeBron night. You need to have the most expensive player on this slate in your lineup.
I'll chase this. I think you need to have some exposure. I don't know if you ever need to have 100% exposure to any player, but I think there's still enough value on this 5-game slate, even with the news that Julius Randle might now play in tonight's games. He's moved from out to questionable, so that's something to always keep an eye on with these health and safety protocols. But we've still got 2.5 teams who have been pretty much ravaged by these protocols. So there's a ton of value. You can find the salary to put LeBron into a lineup. And look, you mentioned it, Emerson, this 8-game stretch. He's gone over 60 DraftKings points 6 times within these 8 games. He's averaging 1.74 DraftKings points per minute within this stretch. That's elite. As soon as you get up past 1.6, that's Giannis, Jokic, rarefied air. Like, if someone's going to produce like that, you just have to find some space for him in a lineup.
Okay, Nick, and then you know what? His teammate, Russell Westbrook, second highest priced player as well.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of have a unique slate tonight. And even if Julius Randle does end up playing, you could throw him in there, but I don't think he has, the type of upside that we're seeing from LeBron over these last 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, even Westbrook, who is, like you said, the second most expensive available option right now, LeBron's averaging like almost 10 more DraftKings points per game than Russell Westbrook this season, which, as Gary kind of alluded to, it hasn't always been the case with LeBron. He's been the guy who, is the better real life player, who oftentimes, is devalued a little bit in fantasy, but he's kind of bucked that trend this season. I mean, he is in the midst of one of the best statistical stretches, not only of his tenure with the Lakers, not only, of the last 5 years, like his entire career. He has had very few stretches where he's been this productive for this many games in a row. And, if you want to go with Westbrook, that's fine. Westbrook's upside these last couple of weeks has been, 40s, 50s in terms of DraftKings points. For LeBron, it's been 60, 70 plus. He's approached 80 DraftKings points in a few games over the last few weeks. So, like Arian said, there's not a player that you absolutely have to have, 100% rostership across every single lineup, but LeBron's getting pretty close right now.
All right, and you got to think with AD too. Not due back anytime soon. Like LeBron's ceiling is pretty damn high right now. Nick, who you chasing as a potential value play here, dude?
Yeah, I mean, we've had so many options, almost too many to keep track of these last few weeks with all the COVID absences, and those are starting to subside a little bit. But it doesn't look like DeAndre Ayton is going to be available for Phoenix. Now that could change. It wouldn't be shocking if he, is kind of in the same situation as Julius Randle. He's been in protocols for over a week, so given the new mandates, it is possible that he could test out and potentially play in this game. But he hasn't played since Christmas, long layoff, conditioning issues, all that. So Jalen Smith at 5,500. I think still makes a lot of sense tonight. No JaVale McGee, of course, for Phoenix. No Frank Kaminsky, who's been injured. So he's pretty much their only true center option and has played pretty well over these last few games after looking like mostly a disaster and a pretty major bust as a rookie. I also like Brandon Clark in Memphis. He's at 3,800 tonight. He's reemerged after kind of falling out of the rotation at the end of last season and not being much of a piece for them early on. But he's played over 20 minutes each of the last two games. No Kyle Anderson, no Xavier Tillman, no Zaire Williams, no Dylan Brooks for Memphis. So Brandon Clark should be able to hold on to that elevated role for at least another game or two.
All right, Gare Bear, give me a potential value play.
I mean, it's the guy with one of the best names in the NBA, Kiefer Sykes. I mean, that's
Oh, yeah.
it's been tattooed on my forehead.
Oh, wow,
Sykes
that looked great.
$500. The Pacers have basically had to replace their entire starting backcourt with LeVert and Brogdon in the health and safety protocols. And I will say, Rick Carlisle has finally adapted the way he's coaching this team offensively, finally letting Domantas Sabonis really be the offensive hub of this team. So it's not like the starting point guard position might mean all that much for the Indiana Pacers tonight. But when you look at Sykes versus like Dwayne Washington, who's $500 more expensive than he is probably going to see a similar amount of minutes. And you go back to their last game, it was Sykes who was second to Sabonis in both touches and potential assists. It just seems like, for better or worse, and as crazy as it sounds, he is kind of the number two option, or at least the number two facilitator on this team. So I just think he's going to have the ball in his hands quite a bit, and it's going to be hard for him not to reach 7x or 8x value with a price tag that cheap.
Gary, let's go over to the DK Sportsbook here, and it appears the Suns are the biggest favorites tonight. 8 points on the road in New Orleans, so I need you to chase or fade that they're going to cover this spread.
I think I'm going to fade, which feels weird. The Suns have just been so dominant. The Pelicans have been, really, narratively speaking, one of the biggest disasters of the 2021-22 season. But I'm a little worried about how they handle Jonas Valanciunas. Nick mentioned that their front court has just been absolutely decimated by injury and the health and safety protocols. Smith's been playing well, but he's still an undersized center, and he's about the only center they have. And he's been playing about 25 to 28 minutes. Maybe that bumps up tonight, which would make him an even better DFS play. But Valanciunas is one of the rare big men in this league that plays 35 to 40 minutes a game. I'm not saying they win this contest, but they are 4-1 ATS their last 5 home games. They're 8-7 their last 15 games overall. They've been just playing better. They've got Brandon Ingram back. He shook off the rust their last game. I think they keep this close. So I'm not saying bet them on the money line, but I would take them +8.
Yeah, Nick, it's now 7.5 point favorite.
I'm going to go on the other side here. I like Phoenix. Like Arian laid out, the Pelicans have been a lot more respectable very quietly over the last month. I think he's right. They were probably the biggest disaster relative to expectations of this entire season. And that hasn't necessarily changed, but, they're no longer losing like 8 out of every 10 games like they were over the first 6 or 7 weeks of the season. For as dominant as Phoenix has been, they are just 9-7 against the spread on the road. So it's not like they're dominating in that regard, but they're coming off of a 34-point win over the Charlotte Hornets on Sunday. If you can handle that team that easily without DeAndre Ayton, you should be able to handle this Pelicans team. I am a little concerned, about that Valanciunas matchup against Jalen Smith. I think that's very much a valid point by Garion. But this is a tough back-to-back situation for the Pelicans. And, Brandon Ingram did come back last night from that sore Achilles. He was a game-time call. Seemed really iffy about playing on it, and publicly spoke about the concerns of playing on an Achilles issue, with what could happen there. I don't have any info on this, but I would not be shocked if he's held out or maybe limited a little bit in this game on the second half of a back-to-back. I mean, he was 3 of 18 from the field last night, played 30-ish minutes, really didn't look like himself. So, I wouldn't be surprised if, midday we find out that he's maybe questionable for this game. And if Brandon Ingram is at all limited, then it's basically the Valanciunas show on offense. Wow. Can I talk?
You all right? Go get some green tea or something.
I feel okay. I don't know what's going on here.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Just want to make sure you're all right, dude. You look great, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, now that your throat has cleared up, Nick, let's go from the highest spread, thickest spread, longest spread on the board to the shortest one. So you have the Knicks that are 2-point favorites at home against the Pacers. So chase or fade that the home team gets it done at MSG.
Man, I was all prepared to make the case for Domantas Sabonis leading the Pacers at MSG over the Knicks. And if Julius Randle doesn't play, I think that's still the way I would lean. Both of these teams are similarly depleted. But Indiana has arguably its best player, whereas, New York up until 7 minutes ago, we thought would for sure be without Julius Randle. And again, they still could be without Randle. It'll likely be a conditioning issue, more so than protocols, which he has officially cleared. The Knicks have lost to OKC and to Toronto by 15 points each over their last 2 games without Randle. Without having him out there, without Derrick Rose, without Kemba Walker, they have no offensive hub, and they've looked completely lost on that end of the floor. So again, if Randle doesn't play, I think that could happen again, even against a Pacers team that's pretty uninspiring on defense. You look at the ATS records, New York is just 6-12 against the spread at MSG this season. Indiana 7-3 as a road underdog. So even though they've been a disappointment, they've been able to keep these games close in these situations. And again, they still have their offensive hub in Sabonis. And hey, I mean, if Kiefer Sykes goes off, I think this is actually a decent spot for Indiana.
Who gets it done, Garion?
Yeah, I mean, I have a pretty similar answer to Nick. I was very ready to fully back the Pacers here. Just the Knicks have looked anemic on offense without Julius Randle. The last 2 games, only scoring 95.9 points per 100 possessions, easily the lowest mark in the NBA. They've really just been a team that has underwhelmed offensively for the entirety of the season when their 3-point shot isn't falling. And Derrick Rose has been a massive factor as well. I mean, when he's been on the court, they are 11 points per 100 possessions better than when he's off the court, when they've actually been kind of terrible. So those 2 players not being available would have made this an easy pick for the Pacers. As it stands right now with Randle questionable, I would just wait to bet this game. If he's out, go with the Pacers. If not, it's probably just a stay away from me. But maybe just bet the under, because I really don't bet. I really don't trust the offense for either of these teams, even if Randle does play.
So, Garion, you're not saying you're not concerned about the Pacers overlooking this game to Kyrie Irving's return tomorrow night?
I'm sure they're thrilled about that. I'm sure their game ops is getting something special right
Yeah.
Probably not the biggest factor in their minds.
Yeah, it's going to be a nice welcome back video there on the Jumbotron in Indiana. Can't wait for that.
That'd be great.
Slate approved pick here, Garion. Favorite DFS or sportsbook play tonight? What do you like?
I just think you got to center a lot of lineups around Domantas Sabonis. We've talked about it a lot, but he's really just doing his best, like, Nikola Jokic light impression these past 3 games. He's averaging about 7 assists per contest on top of the massive point and rebound totals. 58 DraftKings points per game across the last 3. There's really no reason to think that is going to dissipate at all. And if Randle doesn't play, I know Mitchell Robinson is also questionable. He'll probably be on a minutes limit anyway. This is a super undersized Knicks team. They are missing essentially their entire front court, or have the possibility to be missing their entire front court. I mean, Sabonis might go for like 20-20 tonight. He really should just dominate the glass.
All right, Nick, what do you like, man? You got a favorite DFS play or sportsbook play tonight?
Yeah, I mean, you can look at Sabonis, points, rebounds, assist props. I think that makes a lot of sense. And Garion touched on one of mine as well, the under in that Pacers-Knicks game, which has gone up from 206 to 207 in light of the Randle news. That, to me, that doesn't really matter. I think both these teams are really going to struggle to score. I still do like Phoenix minus 7.5 against New Orleans. I know we're split on that one, but I think there's a decent amount of value there. And then to go back to Lakers-Kings, which we touched on at the beginning of the segment, you can get LeBron and Russ to each score at least 25 points at plus money. That's plus 230. And you can get LeBron to have at least 35 points and at least 10 rebounds. That's plus 350. Both of those, especially the second one, seem especially feasible to me. LeBron, the assists have kind of lagged behind playing alongside Westbrook, but the rebounding has been there night in, night out. The scoring obviously has been there. So I like that one at plus 350.
All right, yeah, lots to choose from tonight on the DK Sportsbook. That'll do it for the NBA today. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Gary. And we're going to make our way to the ice for a DFS look at tonight's NHL slate right after this. Let's do that hockey with our three-man panel. Good morning to RotoWire's riveting duo of Paul Bruno and AJ Scholes. We also got the host of the NHL Fantasy on Ice podcast, Pete Jensen. 8 games tonight. Let's get the people a solid DFS breakdown of this slate. Pete, we'll start with you. Which skater are you going to pay up for tonight?
It may sound obvious here, but Nathan MacKinnon, what he's done this season has been rivaled by only a few other players in the entire league. And you know the two guys on Edmonton and also one of his teammates, Nazem Kadri, but he ranks 4th in the NHL in points per game this season behind those 3 guys I just mentioned. But the consistency, I mean, this guy is pretty much a lock for a point every single night. He had a 7-game point streak to start the season, then had 1 game without a point, and now has 10 straight games with a point. I know he's had some injury concern and things like that, but I would get him into my lineup and I would stack him to offset the price with any of those moderately priced Avalanche secondary scorers, either like a Burakovsky or a JT Compher, maybe even a Bowen Byram who's back from injury. And that's my strategy to kick off my lineup building for tonight.
Okay, good stuff. AJ, what is your strategy?
I'm going to look at Steven Stamkos tonight, a little bit cheaper, 7,300. Look, the Blue Jackets are going to either roll with Jonas Korpisalo in goal tonight, who hasn't played since December 16th, or JF Berube, who hasn't played an NHL game since 2017-18 and is putting up mediocre numbers in the minors. They're not bad, but they're not impressive. So, yeah, Stamkos and really that entire Lightning first line with Andre Palat at 5,300, Matthew Joseph at 2,700 makes sense here. They also don't have Werenski. Like, there's no reason not to just completely stack against Columbus tonight.
All right, Paul, who are you going to pay out for? Who's worth the cash?
Well, I think AJ's onto something. I'll save my answer for the next question, I think, though. When we get a question like this, Emerson, I quickly scan the matchups for the big boys. Colorado's top line is certainly one to think about, but they're facing a Chicago team that may expect to start Fleury in the nets. And for me, that changes things. I see the Hawks getting a lift from the veteran goalie, so I fade Rantanen and McKinnon. Pacioretty's listed up there too, but he's listed out long-term with a wrist injury. So that brings me to the Jets winger, Kyle Connor, who ranks 4th among the NHL's top goal scorers with 19 tallies. He costs only $7,800 tonight, despite a great matchup against the woeful Coyotes. He's got 34 points in 31 games, but is vastly underrated in my opinion. Consider that if we were talking about Austin Matthews in this spot, the price tag would be at least $1,500 higher. Sign me up for Connor tonight.
Okay, AJ, how about some value? Help us save some cash, but also someone who could give us some points.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I mentioned Matthew Joseph here for 2,700. He's still set to be on the first line for Tampa Bay, but I'll give you some value on the back end. Noah Hanifin is going to cost you just 3,500 for Calgary tonight. He's been lighting it up late with 4 points in his last 4 games. The matchup with the Panthers and Sergei Bobrovsky is confirmed to be in goal tonight is far from ideal, but I think that's only going to serve to lower his potential drafted percentage. based on what he's been doing lately, 3,500, you'd expect him to be in the lineup there. But I think the matchup here might scare a few people off. So for me, I like him in GPP contests.
Paul, you teased your answer to this question moments ago. Please deliver.
In their matchup against Columbus tonight, but I think I'm going with the second line here instead of the first one. I think it's a great stacking opportunity. And I throw in the entire second unit out there. It's driven by Brayden Point, who's priced at only $6,600, but the real value is in his wingers, and they are Alex Killorn, who has 9 points in his last 10 games, regularly featured on the club's Fulton power play too. That means he's going to get a lot of high leverage minutes overall, and he costs only $4,500 tonight. Similarly, Anthony Cirelli is a guy who has seen more scoring line playing time recently with Kucherov sideline. He has 6 points in his last 10 games and costs $3,900 tonight. And finally, another guy that I like is Paul Stastny for $3,500. This guy's moved all over the Jets roster this season because he plays equally well on the wing and at center. With Blake Wheeler sidelined, I see Stastny getting the plum assignment of a top line role with Scheifele and Ehlers. Stastny has 4 points in his last 2 games playing there, and obviously enjoys this opportunity as he's averaging 19 minutes per game in his last 5 starts.
All right, Pete, who are you looking at for value?
I also love that line with Ehlers, Scheifele, and Stastny lately, and I love the value pick there from Paul on Stastny. I'm going with Clayton Keller. I know that the Coyotes are the worst team in the league in the standings, but they've been putting up some crazy offensive numbers. You look at Clayton Keller, 6 points during his 3-game point streak with 19 shots on goal in just 3 games in that span. So pretty amazing high floor there for Clayton Keller. He's got 17 points in his past 14 games. And the Coyotes' offense, as bad as the team is overall, they're giving up a ton of goals over the span. But over 4 games since December 11th, they are second in goals per game at 4.5 in the entire NHL. So some sneaky appeal with those Yotes, without a doubt. So I'm rolling out Clayton Keller in my mock lineup for $4,700.
Paul, big picture here. Which team are you confident will win its game tonight?
There are three that I'll touch on, Emerson. I've already made the case for Tampa tonight, so it should come as no surprise that I'm prepared to take them at -1.5 on the puck line for a 110 payoff. Similarly, I have to go back to the Jets' visit to Arizona. That's going to be a mismatch, and I do the same thing. Go to the puck line for the 120 payoff there. The third game that I'm looking at is the Devils' trip to Boston. Both teams playing well lately, but I have more faith in the home side tonight, so I'll be on the Bruins on the puck line, giving up the 1.5 goals at +100.
Pete, how about you?
I'll stick with the Avalanche here. I think a really good chance they win at Chicago by multiple goals. I totally get the point that Paul was making about Marc-Andre Fleury, but when the Avalanche comes, literally it comes, and they could overcome a multi-goal deficit and still win by multiple goals. That's the ceiling for Colorado. So they lead the NHL in goals per game this season with 4.21. The Blackhawks, like the Avs in a way, play high event hockey, so they allow a ton of high danger scoring chances, and they have a bottom 5 PK. So if the Avalanche get 4 or 5 power play opportunities, this game could be long gone here.
Yeah, Avs -245 on the money line. AJ, talk to me about a team you're confident will win tonight.
Well, obviously the Lightning. I've been talking them up the entire time here, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them win by a couple goals here. Again, just completely outmatching the Blue Jackets. They won't have Texier tonight. They don't have Werenski. Like, all their best players are out. The one underdog that I kind of like tonight is Nashville. The Golden Knights, unlikely to have Leonard, Stone, or Pacioretty in that one. Laurent Brossoit has allowed 3 or more goals in 3 of his last 4 contests and hasn't shown anything that would instill any sort of confidence that he could hang on for them with Leonard out. So I like Nashville tonight as an underdog pick.
All right, +100 there on the road. Which game do you like to be high scoring, Pete?
I like the game that features 2 top 10 offenses, Florida and Calgary. And Florida is always in that next man up mentality. Like, Sam Bennett is suspended 3 games starting tonight. Sam Reinhart, a guy that normally fills in at different positions, is on COVID protocol. So they have, I think, other than maybe Colorado, the deepest offense in the league. And look at what Anton Lundell, if you're looking at DFS, he's going to be slotting in most likely in the top 6 with some high-scoring wings with Duclair and Jonathan Huberdeau. So the offense is just plentiful for Florida. And then Calgary has maybe the best top line in the whole league to match that with Tkachuk, Elias Lindholm, and Johnny Gaudreau. So, yeah, I just think that there's too much scoring on both sides for that to be a low-scoring game. So that's my rationale there.
Cool. Got a total of 6 in that game. AJ, which one are you going to target?
I mean, is it bad form to keep talking about the same game here? Like, the Lightning could pile up, 6 goals on the Jackets by themselves tonight. And, without a lot of offense coming from Columbus, it may not be the highest scoring game on the night, but certainly, the Lightning have all they need to just handle the total on themselves. Another game to maybe, consider is Detroit and San Jose. I know neither of these teams is considered like high scoring here, but the Sharks just got rocked to the tune of 8 goals allowed, 6 of which starter tonight, James Reimer, gave up in the first period. Then they went and they put in 5 on themselves. So they do have some offense that they can figure out here. I just think there's so little goaltending and defensive side in this game that we could see a similar showcase to that 8-5 game that San Jose lost the other night.
Okay, rock on. Paul, bring us home here, man.
You know what? I got to refer back to Pete's comment. I've got both starting goalies in the Champions League that are going tonight in that tilt in Florida. I hope it's a 1-0 game. So I'm going to go to the under on that one. But to your question, I'm expecting a lot of goals. Like AJ said, we've been hammering on the Tampa Lightning. I think they're going to rout Columbus tonight. I agree with AJ there. So I'll take the over. In fact, I might even go to the alternate line for a bigger payoff there. I also like the over under on the Detroit game against the visiting Sharks. Both teams have gotten up north of 3 goals per game on the year, and they're not doing even that well most recently. There's too many talented players, Larkin and Bertuzzi for the Wings, Couture, Hurdle, Burns, and Carlson for the Sens to keep this one under that line. So I'm going to the alternate again for over 7 in this one as well.
Hockey dudes, that's how you do what you just did. Appreciate all the help. The golf guys are back, and they will be here in about 60 seconds. The boys are buzzing. The gorgeous golf gurus are back. Let's go. Rested and rejuvenated and ready for a long, long season of watching dudes roll a good meatball. That's DraftKings contributor Jeff Ulbrich on the right and Reed T. Fowler on the left. Reed, back in your neck of the woods this week. Maui, you love to see it, man. Primetime golf always reminds me being back in college with the dudes, and we'd stay up late and, we'd watch golf go down in paradise, bro.
I know. It's especially for us who live in cold climates like the ones on your screen right now. It really is a juxtaposition of where you are and where you want to be.
Oh, man. Absolute pain, especially for Jeff. Oh, yeah, all of us. It's like Antarctica, like outside right now. All right, so this is PGA Tour high or low here, guys. So the following golfers' odds: too high, so too long, or too low, which is too short. It's the Century Tournament of Champions. I've seen that I think Berger And is it Hovland? I think those two are still waiting for their clubs to show up. So I don't know. Do what you want with that information. John Rahm plus 750 right now, Reed. What do you think? Too high or too low?
I mean, he's the lowest on the board, and rightfully so. I mean, I don't think you can get much lower than this, though, right? We've seen odds, maybe like DJ come in at this in some tournaments, like a RBC Heritage. But this is John Rahm against the strongest field, right? 39 of the top 40 winners of last year, and he sans Rory McIlroy, and he deserves it. If you look at weighted stats, if you look at strength of field of how he performs in terms of strokes gained total, this guy is by far and away the best player on the PGA Tour right now in the world. So I get it. I'm not too worried. If you want to go after this number, by all means. I won't. I think Jeff is in that same camp, as we'll never tell you to bet this number. This is too short of odds, especially with the Tournament of Champions. But yeah, he needs to be there. He is the best golfer in the world.
All right, Ulrich, he hasn't made a start on tour since the season opening Fortinet Don't Call Me Fortnite Championship in September. And he missed the cut there, dude.
Yeah, he did. I mean, and I think that's like the biggest thing you worry about with John Rahm this week, right? I mean, it's just the lack of sort of fall performances. You know, obviously, like he played some over in Europe, and he didn't really do much of anything. But there's a lot of top players in that boat. I mean, we just talked about Daniel Berger. Daniel Berger has one start in 4 months. I mean, it was a good start. It was at the Hero Challenge, and he finished T7. It was a field of like 18 players. But I think that with Rahm, I really do feel like for DFS, he's going to be a better play than necessarily betting. I'm not betting him at plus 750. It's just kind of a ridiculous odds considering like the top end players that we have here. I mean, you know, a guy that short, a guy who hasn't really like ever really challenged for the win here. I know he's been top 10 numerous times, but some of those have just been backdoor Sunday kind of, you know, movements with Rahm. So no, I think plus 750, just too short. He's clearly the top player here, but I think in DFS, that's probably where you want to take a shot with Rahm. He's going to be lower owned. He's up there in price on DraftKings, but for betting purposes, I think there's a few better targets here once you get over plus 2,000.
Okay, Jeff, would you say Victor Hovland here is a better choice?
Well, I did until I found out this news that he doesn't have golf clubs. You know, I don't know. Victor Hovland with the rental set, where do we put him in the odds? Plus 2,000? Right now he's plus 1,200 on the DraftKings Sportsbook. This guy's playing so well, though. Victor Hovland just feels like he's reached like another level, like another state. You know, when you get the upgrades in the video games, like, and you get the extra suit or the extra armor, that's what it feels like Victor Hovland is. 2 wins in his last 2 starts. And the thing with Hovland is this is like his bread and butter, like the tropical non-mainland U.S. settings, Puerto Rico, you know, the Hero Challenge, wherever that was in the Bahamas. And this is where this guy excels. He's just so good tee to green. He's found his putting stroke. I think plus 1,200 is actually quite fair for him here. You know, as far as do you want to take a shot with him, I would just prefer that in an event like this, if you're going to go with multiple players, to take a shot with a couple guys in the plus 2,000 range, because there's just so much talent here. But if you're going shorter in the odds, I actually do kind of prefer him over guys like Cantley or even Bryson this week. I think Hovland's just too good to fade right now, and he's definitely priced appropriately.
Dude, Reed, can he win this thing with like the club pros clubs? He posted yesterday.
Without clubs?
Yeah, he posted yesterday. He's like, I've been here since Wednesday, and his clubs are still in Seattle, and he's not very happy with Delta right now.
No, I mean, if you go on Emerson's Twitter, also you'll see that there are some rants on certain airlines, which we will not name. But look, I mean, if he doesn't have his clubs, you got to downgrade him a little bit. But even then, right, maybe if you get a little shift, a little drift in the odds because his clubs aren't there, and then finally, miraculously, they come on Thursday, then, you know, maybe you get a good number on Hoblin. I'm surprised, though. Jeff's boy, Bryson DeChambeau, and Patrick Cantley, guys that he really touts throughout the year, I'd rather go with those 2 guys. And look, I'm going to do a Jeff Ulrich and name everyone in this range. Sander Schauffele, right, the no-cut event prince. You know, he just does so well. But I think Bryson's in line for a pretty good week here. So I'm going to say for Hovland, this is a little bit too short. Just because I get the recent form and I get the type of courses that he wins at no cut, right? In the Hero World Challenge, tropical. He's got a couple of wins in tropical settings. But Bryson, when accuracy is not a thing off the tee, this guy's going to bomb every single driver possible known to mankind. His putting is fantastic. The wedge game scares me with Bryson a little bit. But if we're talking about DFS, Patrick Cantley is a little bit more on the DFS side. He's at $9,700 on DK. That's massively short for a guy who just won the FedEx Cup, right? So
Yeah.
I like a few guys more than Hovland this week in this range.
Okay, so then you mentioned DeChambeau. Jeff, what do you think about DeChambeau then at plus 1,200? So he was 14th at the Hero World Challenge here. We all know he played in the match. Obviously, and Reed knows this too, this is a windy track. There's a lot of uneven lies here, and I feel like that can throw a wrench into his typical usual game strategy.
Yeah, I mean, from a birdie making rate, no one's better than Bryson. So you kind of look at it and say, well, this is often a birdie fest, and it's probably a good setup for him. But these greens are tricky, and we've got the whole green book thing, and the windy setup. I just don't think this is necessarily like one where Bryson is going to be competing year in, year out. Again, like I don't want to bring up his leading form because like so many of these top players don't have the greatest lead up form, but we just haven't really seen Bryson compete here. And with just how he performed over the fall and not really played that much, I'm okay leaving him out. I mean, would I be surprised if Bryson just lit it up with like a 61 on Thursday and bounced out to a big lead? No, but I mean, you could say that about a guy like Brooks Koepka too, who's a lot bigger in odds. And I think that's the biggest thing here. If you're going to take someone in this range, I'd much rather go with the informed player like a Hovland. Whereas if you're going to take a shot with a guy who has the talent but maybe hasn't shown the form, I think that's where you have to go bigger in the odds. And for me right now, Bryson, I just rather target him at certain different areas. I think he still probably will struggle a little bit on these bigger greens. It's not supposed to be windy. That could help him, but I just prefer other players in this range.
All right, well, speaking of bigger odds, longer odds, Reed, Tony Finau, plus 2,500 here, man. Your favorite golfer and your favorite place in the world. Oh, and I totally expect throughout the season you pulling a Jeff Ulrich and literally continue to talk about him every day since I know now he's on your season-long golf team.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, absolutely. He was the first pick on the Team Shaka. He was by far and away my favorite pick. I was waiting, and no one was going to pick him. And yes, everybody cares, Cody.
Yeah,
so
Cody.
Get off. Just because you don't care doesn't mean anyone else cares. But anyway, moving on. Look, Finau, he's a guy that strength of field, right? He plays well in these stronger fields. Now at 2,500, even though he's one of my favorite golfers, I don't necessarily think that these odds, like the odds for him at 2,500 in this tournament, is going to be fine because you're going to find him at much shorter odds in bigger fields. And to Jeff's point, that's what you want to take a look at, right? It's some of these players who aren't informed, but who have the ability to go low. And birdies are going to be a premium at this course. It's the putting that scares me. There's probably a few other courses like the Masters and some other majors where putting is the predominant stat. This is one of those courses where you have to putt. These are huge greens. 3-putt avoidance, definitely the case. You need to be making those putts between 10 to 15 feet. And that's just not Finau's game, right? It's Sanjay is right there. I like Sanjay a little bit more. And Cam Smith. Talk about someone, too, that's a really good at this number. Cam Smith at the same or plus 2,200. He's a guy who's number one in strokes gained putting over the last 50 rounds, who doesn't have to worry about his driving accuracy. That I'd much rather go to than Finau. Finau you want to save for those bigger tournaments, stronger, maybe less stronger fields that you can absolutely get birdies at.
All right, Jeff, how do you feel about Reed's guy?
Oh, I mean, I was ready to give my season-long guy, Cam Smith, some love here just to make sure you get him motivated for the year ahead. But, Reed made the argument for me. I think in this range, you almost need to make it more of a value proposition. And Finau does have the longest odds, I think, between like Sanjay, Spieth, and Cam Smith. But I kind of do have to agree with what Reed said. Like, I would rather try and get Sanjay or Cam Smith on board here, especially Sanjay. Sanjay is such a good putter on Bermuda grass, or he has been at times. He certainly had most of his spike weeks on Bermuda. But, Tony Finau coming in here off a win on the playoffs. And I know one of the trends I've thrown out on Twitter is, with the Tournament of Champions, the guys obviously all have wins under their belt, but 5 of the last 6 winners here, they've grabbed wins either in the FedEx Cup playoffs or in the fall swing. Finau obviously fits in that swing. So does Sanjay M, who grabbed one in the fall. So something to think about. But I slightly prefer guys over Finau. I do think, though, if you're looking for like a basket of players in this range and you want to grab Finau as one of them, he does have bigger odds than the guys we're mentioning. So I don't think he's necessarily a bad bet. I prefer him, like I said, taking a shot with Finau at plus 2,500 over Bryson this week. That's 100% for sure. But Probably would rank him third behind Sungjae and Cam Smith, but it is really close between those three players this week. I like all three of them.
All right, guys, we have less than 30 seconds to go. Just Slater-proof pick. Guys, odds you like to win this thing. Reed.
I think Patrick Cantley is in play. I think no one's talking about him, so give me Patrick Cantley.
All right, Jeff.
Yeah, I think if you're going with one player, especially at the top, I like Sam Burns. I know it's his first time around, but plus 1,800, this guy's such a good, he's just good at everything.
Yep.
And I think he can make enough birdies to actually get the W here.
Man, no one talking about Stuart Sink at plus 20,000 and that incredible hat tan of his. All right,
Garrett Hago.
You two and I will talk much more about this tomorrow on the slate, 5 o'clock. We're going to do a lot of golf tomorrow. And hopefully tomorrow here on the show, we'll dive into even more. So thank you to Gorgeous Golf Gurus. The season is back. It's going to be fun. It's going to be long. It's going to be exciting. We're back tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock Eastern time, everybody. Thanks for watching.